Hi, everybody. Welcome to Good, the podcast for those that do. This is Shivo. I'm here with D-Fran. And tonight we have Marc Azoulay, a psychotherapist out of Boulder, Colorado. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So we first met Mark via Twitter a couple weeks ago and started looking through some of his content that he puts out on his website and on Twitter, and thought he'd be a great guy to have on the podcast. He's definitely got a different perspective from the some recent guests and some of the things we've been talking about before. Um, and so, yeah, we started talking back and forth via email, and we're able to set this up. So we're really happy to have him, and we think he's going to add a lot to this episode.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Twitter's been like a really cool platform for me to kind of just get out a motivational message and to connect with a ton of people. It's really cool to network with people like yourselves that are just kind of doing it on their own, like entrepreneurs. It's like kind of like the small business marketplace of 2016. I
Yeah,
love it for that.
yeah, it really has been. And the three previous guests we've had have all said the best way for me to reach people is Twitter, and people have spoke of, I've learned of business opportunities via Twitter. I've learned of conferences via Twitter, and yeah, it's not what it used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. It used to be a bunch of people just like complaining, I guess.
Yeah,
But now it's like there's a lot of really cool promotion going on and messages being spread. I like it a lot.
yeah, it's very good. So Mark, why don't you just get into a quick little background of yourself and kind of where you grew up, your upbringing, and how you got into the line of work you're currently in.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to give you the quick version of that story. I was born in like a rural town in Maryland, and kind of like a nerdy, dorky kid. So really shy, kind of bullied and kind of shut down for a lot of it. But I was really smart. So I was always reading books, always like learning, always studying. And some stuff happened in my childhood which kind of led to developing an addiction, actually. So I'm currently in recovery. I'm 3 years in recovery, and that kind of escalated throughout college. Got into using drugs, selling drugs, getting around with all that, and went to therapy kind of in my second year of college, and that saved my life. I mean, my life was kind of at like a terminal endpoint. Like it really wasn't going to go anywhere. Either end up in total failure or even death, kind of where I was. And psychotherapy for me was a total life saver. Just having like the time and the place to talk about who I am and what's important to me was critical. And to, I don't know, just like reflect and correct a lot of my thinking and have someone like really care about me was really healing for me. So I did that. And during the time I was doing that, I was working in a lab. I got my degree in neuroscience from Carnegie Mellon, and I was studying meditation. And I was doing this thing where I was like writing papers on how good meditation was and how it was really critical and how everyone should do it and how it changes the brain, changes life. And I wasn't meditating, so I was just like producing all this stuff. I just wasn't doing it. So being kind of the extreme person that I wanted to go to Cambodia and become a monk. And just like, I was like, that's my life. Just gonna just do monk life forever. And, I got some feedback from my family and from my friends saying like, you really can't do that. So I went to Naropa, which is a Buddhist university here in Boulder, which is as close as you can get to being a monk and still kind of being in society. So I got my master's in contemplative psychotherapy, which mixes Western therapy, mainly psychoanalysis, with Eastern wisdom traditions like Buddhism and Hinduism. And did that for 3 years, developed meditation practice, really worked on myself, and now I'm practicing. So I'm in private practice mostly. I work with clients, mainly young men are kind of coming in the door right now, people that are in high school, that are in college, and also a couple like older men too. And I work with addictions mainly, but kind of as we'll go into a little bit more, is addictions are more of like a symptom. They're not really the root problem. There's usually some kind of trauma underneath them, or a mental illness, or some kind of invalidated need, a tough childhood. So addictions get people in the door, but my work is actually pretty varied because it's usually something very different underneath it. So I do that. I see individual clients, and I run a couple groups, which are run in the modern psychoanalytic style, which is kind of open talking, pretty much. And I also work with the court system. So I have a contract with the Colorado court system, where I work with people who get misdemeanors, so possession charges, DUIs, minor assault, stuff like that. Again, usually people who just have a really tough life and need some care and some wisdom to kind of get back on track. So that's kind of like the day job. The other job I do is I'm a social media marketing and business coach. And I help people, entrepreneurs, therapists, small businesses, authors, promote their business and create a platform through places like Twitter, help them with their website, help them with Facebook to kind of get out there. And I use some of my therapy skills with that too, because as I'm sure you guys know or have experienced, becoming more visible can bring up a lot of really intense feelings and a lot of really judgments and things like that. So I help people work through that kind of therapeutically well as kind of the logistical part of building a business.
Wow. That's
the intro.
that was very, very good. There's a lot in there that I want to dissect a little bit.
Sure.
I think the whole learning about like the Buddhism and all that, and having this Eastern kind of mindset, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's awesome. I am an athletic trainer by profession, so I deal, with musculoskeletal injuries every single day, and my job is treatment and rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've seen, and I am by no means an expert in Eastern medicine, but I've read a couple of things and I'm certainly interested in it, and I think they're onto something. And I think that having that kind of mindset, that whole body kind of mindset to healing something and treating the person and not like a single symptom is a much better idea than passing out a million pills and saying, here, take this for the rest of your life.
Yeah, definitely. It's a total shift in frame. It's, the Eastern philosophies are all about balance, right? So if you're out of balance, then that's when the symptoms kind of arise. And balance can mean like, physical balance, like an injury or something, or diet, or it can mean like mental balance. A lot of stress can turn into disease or even turn into injury. Whereas the Western view is more like mechanical. It's like, here's the problem, like your kidneys are the problem, let's cut them out, which I don't know. I mean, I think that works for maybe really intense situations where surgery and things are necessary, but the balance thing is really critical to help people kind of build a life that is worth living and that creates health, kind of promotes health beyond just fixing the problem.
Right. That's awesome. And then so with that being said, and trying to create balance within a person, is that where you kind of start to implement meditation?
Yeah. So meditation in the way that I practice and the way that I teach my clients is kind of just being with their experience, right? So there's kind of two different ways of meditation. There's this focused type of meditation, which is like, stare at a wall or stare at a candle flame or like really build your focus. And there's what I practice is kind of open meditation, which is be with your experience no matter what it is, right? So it's not about trying to feel something, it's not about trying to get somewhere. It's just about being present. And Western civilization in general really struggles with that. I mean, we are a distraction, candy bar culture. And just sitting quietly, being with our experience can be quite triggering for a lot of people, especially people who are prone to substance use. Because they tend to use substances, and I did the same thing, to get away from being sober, right? Because something about being sober is intolerable, be it a physical sensation or a memory or something like anxiety or depression, trauma flashbacks, rumination. It could be, a myriad of things. So I help to train people to just be with their experience and actually bring a kind of open, compassionate lens to it. and realize that, hey, it's not going to kill you. And in fact, awareness starts to heal it. You may experience this with your physical training. If people can actually tune in and be aware of their injuries, the body almost like heals itself. It's pretty wild. I've experienced that in my yoga practice, where just being with my injuries allows them to feel safe and allows them to open and allows movement and vitality to move into there.
Yeah, I see it. I know where you're getting at, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea of, and we can take it back to almost ownership, saying that this is my problem, this is the issue. Now let's work on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, this is good stuff. What do you think over there, D-Fran?
Oh, I'm thinking. I was waiting for Mark. Mark was ripping and rolling there, brother. That was good stuff. Mark, get into this role. You learn about Buddhism. You do a lot of self-realization. I mean, we know what was really great was when I was in San Diego this weekend. There's this like garden. There's this self-realization garden where a bunch of Buddhist monks hang out. And it's gorgeous, and you're not surprised that it's a self-realization place because, you can see why overlooking a cliff over the Pacific Ocean, why it's surrounded by great, flowers, is going to help you find yourself. But what's your mission when you sit down with clients and you sit down with someone who needs your help? Every client is different. Just like in Eastern medicine, you treat the client, not the symptoms. So what's your process? I think that's what I'm trying to get at. What's your process? I mean, you got to have a streamlined process. So what is that when you're meeting with new clients?
Yeah. So the type of psychotherapy I practice primarily is something called modern psychoanalysis. And what that is I'm studying the way that people talk. And the idea of that is to get in touch with their unconscious. So there's kind of a saying in the analytic community, which is therapy doesn't start until 2 years in. And
really,
that's kind of true. Yeah, it kind of takes like 2 years to build trust, for someone to like really just know that I'm there, know that I know their story, kind of get all the history stuff out of the way. And in that time, I'm doing things like traditional addictions counseling, which is, making a relapse prevention plan, helping them understand why they use drugs, what it's all about, just talking about kind of planning and strategy. But what I'm really doing, and this is what I really find fascinating, is I'm studying something called resistance. And resistance is when somebody has trouble talking. So to kind of highlight that, like the idea of psychoanalysis is you come into the room and you talk, right? You talk about whatever's on your mind. And you'll find that people will go for a while and then they'll stop. And they'll stop with either saying something like, oh, this isn't important, or, oh, this is embarrassing, or, oh, you don't care about this. And my job is really to be like, oh, maybe I do. Like, keep talking, And in that process and in letting people just express themselves freely, similar to what we're talking about with the Eastern medicine, the mind heals itself. Like connections start to get drawn that are kind of weird. The unconscious, it has an internal logic, like it makes sense, but only when you unpack it, right? So for instance, a really common thing is people sometimes tend to treat all women like they treat their mother, or treat all women like they treat their sister, but they're not aware of that. So it's studying things like that to be like, okay, where are you getting in your own way, right? How are your unconscious things, and in Buddhism it's called conditioning, how's your conditioning getting in the way of being effective in your life? And the only way for that to really happen is for them to come to these realizations of like, oh my God, like I'm acting on an assumption, right? Or I'm acting on a lie, or I'm acting on a belief that is not really true in the situation. I'm actually kind of crippling myself. So I help people just to see that. So my job isn't so much to give advice, it's just to kind of be a mirror and just to be like, hey, look what's happening. And then they could do whatever they want with it. But I'm just kind of holding up that mirror to them again and again and again. And, highlighting that they're kind of built themselves a prison in a way, or built themselves into a cocoon that they don't even know that they're in. And we're all like this. I mean, I'm still like this. I'm not enlightened by any means. I'm in my own treatment. But it's the idea that like getting rid of the barriers that we put in our own ways, the fears, the anxieties, the memories that we still hold on to, the storylines that we still hold on to. A lot of those can be quite toxic to actually hold and to continue to believe when they may or may not be true. And most of the time they're not. They're really not true. They're just our interpretation of kind of who we are and what we're all about.
Yeah, I focus a lot talking about how what I see. Let's say both me and you, Mark, we're sitting in Michigan and we're down in Detroit. You know, what you see versus what I see are two different things, and we could be looking at the same exact thing, but the way you're interpreting your world is a reflection of yourself, right? The way you interpret your world is how you feel, right? I feel that, and I would really love to hear your take on this, is that positive people and people that see the world in a positive, optimistic light have positive things or more positive things happen to them than someone who looks at the world in a negative light or looks at the world in a pessimistic light. And it makes sense, right? I mean, how many negative people do you see? Like, wow, look how negative that person is. Just a bunch of good stuff happens to them. It's like, no, you know, typically the person who has a bad attitude about everything, you know, bad shit happens to them. You know, it's not there's no secret there. But in your experience, is that kind of what you're used to?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
100%.
We tend to 100%. Yeah, like we tend to project ourselves onto the world around us. And a big part, perhaps even the main part of my job, is allowing people to see that.
Right.
Both on how they do it in the world, and what the cool part about analysis is how they do it to me. So we're studying the relationship as well. And thoughts they have about what I think and who I am and things like that. Again, just being kind of that mirror. But yeah, I mean, there's this book you might find interesting called The Diamond Cutter, which is about applying Buddhist principles to business. And one thing in that book is about the idea of a market, that there's no such thing as a good or a bad market, right? It's someone's perception and perspective on it. Somebody who has a positive perception can see opportunity where somebody else can't. And they literally see it where the other person cannot see it. And they can turn what is, you know, perhaps a bad market into an opportunity for growth. And that is entirely internal work. That is like exclusively working on yourself and being able to keep yourself open to opportunities and keep yourself open to ways where you can grow and ways that your business can develop.
Yeah. Again, 100%. That makes a whole lot of sense. I want to backtrack a little bit here to when you're saying, you know, when you're talking with clients and you're just, as we're talking and you're going through these storylines or these memories that they're holding on to that may be causing, you know, these symptoms. What's the process like to try to start to get rid of those thoughts? Yeah.
So the very first thing is telling the story. And that's why it says it takes 2 years. So telling the story again and again and again and again, because it'll keep coming up until it loses its charge, you know, until it becomes something that is a fact of life and not so much an emotional charge, right? And this is something, this is a whole other topic, but this is something that I think a lot about, and kind of the value of my service is that, you know, so say you and me are talking, right? And I tell you a really horrible story about my childhood, right? And it's really upsetting me, and maybe I'm crying when I'm telling it. But for you, it's just information, right? Like it's not true for you. Like you can empathize and you can be there and you can, you know, listen to me, but it's just information. And by modeling that, by modeling a calm, accepting, compassionate presence for people, they start to see their own history as just information, as just like the cards that they've been dealt. You know, it doesn't have to have all the charge attached to it. It can just be
that's a great
thing that happened.
Right. And then over time, telling that same story over and over again, it's going to kind of continue to lose that charge. And then after 2 years, you're just saying, oh, yeah, this thing happened to me. Not that big of a deal.
Right. So it's losing the charge, and then following those unconscious threads of like, where is it cropping up now? Right? Where is that story kind of messing with you right now? And can you remember that? You know, in those moments, maybe when you're fighting with your partner, can you remember you're not fighting with your partner, you're fighting with your mom, right? Like if you just have that in there, it'll actually start to free you because you can take a step back. Again, why meditation is important, because it helps people create that place of calm and really notice what's going on in their mind and be like, oh, wow, I'm really triggered right now. Or like, oh, wow, I'm really irrational and I'm really acting from a really young place or a really hurt place. Maybe instead of fighting with my partner, I just need a hug, right? Or maybe I just need some space. And that's kind of how it creates lasting change in people, because they're able to have this understanding of themselves. This very deep understanding of themselves, and notice when their unconscious is getting in the way, and choose to soothe it instead of, inflame it or excite it.
Right. Yeah, when you're in a situation like that, to be able to detach, as our guy Jocko would say, be able to detach from the situation, take a step back, assess it, and say, okay, what's really going on here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of times, how many times do you you're like, oh man, I'm really mad, I'm really aggravated, or things aren't going right, today's the worst day ever, right? And then you look back on that day and be like, really? Of all the things that happened today, one thing was bad. Was it a big thing that was bad? Sure, absolutely. It was the thing that was bad was probably a big thing that was bad. But overall, it was great, But it's so easy to just pull yourself into, accepting the fear, the feeling of failure or the feeling of disappointment. It's very easy to accept that. So.
Yeah, it is. I mean, people really struggle. Disappointment's a huge one, especially with the up and coming generation. Is we suck at that. We're used to instant gratification. So patience, disappointment, really hard to be with. And again, feeling into just the raw experience, the raw emotional experience of disappointment, not that bad. It's not that bad. Like it won't really hurt you. It's not hurting you. It's not killing you. And to kind of build off the point that you're making is the human mind hates change, hates it. So if you're having a bad day and you're going to go ahead and label it a bad day, you will unconsciously do things that will continue to make your day bad, because the mind would rather feel bad or feel angry than shift gears and feel happy or feel optimistic. It's kind of weird in that way. Like it likes patterns and it likes predictability. So even if the predictability is painful, at least it knows what it's expecting, right? That's kind of what happens with things like depression, where, the solution for depression is like, go outside and talk to people. Like, it's really simple. I don't mean to patronize people with depression, because it's a really big problem to actually muster the courage and the energy to do that. But the brain gets stuck in a depressed space where it just wants the routine. It's safer for it to lay in bed and do nothing because it knows what that's going to be. It's very scary for it to go and try to make a friend or to go and try and exercise. It can feel like trying to conquer the world at that point. So I help people to, first and foremost, absolutely validate their feelings and validate what they're going through, and then help them see that it doesn't have to be this way. They don't have to lock themselves away in a prison.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's from our vantage point, it's not that it's easy to say, oh yeah, just go talk to somebody or go make a friend. But I mean, at the end of the day, it could be that simple. And that sometimes simple goes a whole lot further than something way more complex.
Yeah, the mind has an amazing ability to adapt. That's what makes humans incredible, is that we're adaptable. And just putting yourself in a situation that is scary, that is challenging, oftentimes people find that they're more powerful than they think they are, right? This is something that I had to deal with, kind of like a side story, but, when I was in my addiction and when I was like partying, I used that a lot to like meet girls, and like talk to women. And in being sober, I had to learn how to go to a bar sober and how to talk to a girl sober. And the hardest part, and it was really hard. I mean, this was like years of like trying to develop this skill. The hardest part was approaching somebody. We're just approaching a girl at a bar and saying like, hey, what's up? My name's Mark. How you doing? Once I was in relationship with somebody, once I was having a conversation, I could talk for hours, but that approach was very hard. It was hard to overcome that hump. And a lot of things are like that. Something that one of my friends says is the hardest part of working out is going to the gym, right? Like if you can get there, you can work out. Right. It just takes a lot of willpower and a lot of energy to like put yourself in a situation where you're almost forced or challenged to grow. but people time and time again rise to the occasion that they put themselves into.
Yeah. It's as simple as there are things in life that are easy to do, and there are things in life that are easy not to do. And getting to the gym is one of those things that is, it's easy not to do. You can easily say, "Oh man, if I leave the house right now, it's going to take me 15 minutes to get there, and then I need to be back by this time, so I'm only going to have 20 minutes at the gym, and you know what? It's just not worth it." And you can continue to validate that in any setting or with any task, and those it's something that's pretty easy to do, but it's just as easy not to do it. And if you're stuck in that cycle, you're never going to improve.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Mark, when you take on a new client, you're sitting down, you're meeting someone for the first time. You have no idea what's in that person's bag. What's a psychotherapist's process? When you take on a client, they sit down, and I know I ask a lot of process questions, but I love to know what's going through your head, because you have no idea what you work one job, or you work a job where you have no idea what the person on the side of the desk is going to spew out to you, and you're going to have to be able to react to it in a professional way. So, how do you prepare yourself for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first and foremost, going back to it again, is my own meditation practice. Similar to what we were talking about before, of everything being a projection of ourselves. Doing my own work, being meditation. I'm currently in therapy. I probably will be forever. Doing supervision, being fit. Exercising, having a good diet. All that stuff is for my clients. It's so when somebody talks to me, I can be with them. And I don't have judgments. I do. I'm not going to try to be, holier than thou, but I can temper them. I can put them on the side. I can be present. I can be calm with somebody, because I've been to a lot of those dark places. And if you look at my website, it does kind of have a dark aesthetic to it. I've been to a lot of those dark places myself. Certainly not all of them, but I have been in very extreme emotional situations, and I've survived, and I can tolerate them. So a lot of my prep is just learning how to tolerate my own emotions and my own life. So when someone comes at me with something, I can hold it, right? I can not lash out. I don't act out. I don't get mad at them. I don't insult them. I'm just there. So that's a lot of front end, and a lot of just kind of constant maintenance and constant self-improvement. But as far as the process goes, so kind of if you want the timeline, the first session I do, which is the free consultation, they come in and I just let them talk. They just talk for about 45 minutes where they say whatever, and whatever their presenting problem is, why they're coming, why they want therapy. And then I spend about 15 minutes talking about my process and how I do the work and what analysis is and some of the other things I offer. Then on session 2, we do meditation instruction. So the first real session is you learn how to meditate. And we spend about an hour on that, where I teach people that. We practice it in session. And I'm like, this is what we do in the beginning of every session. And I meditate with pretty much all my clients for the first 5 minutes of the session. It's a pretty key point of what I do. And then for the next month or so, we do something called the developmental history, where I have a series of questions that I ask, where I just run people's story from not even birth, but pre-birth. What was it like when your mom was pregnant with you? All the way to the present. And that can take from a month to about a month and a half, where we just go in and we just do headlines. So I get their story down. And then at that point, it becomes open analysis, where they just talk. The only instructions for them to keep talking. And I know enough where I can start to make some kind of superficial connections. But again, mainly I'm just listening. And I'm just being with them and seeing what comes up, and kind of being that mirror. It's strange. I don't actually need to know somebody that well to be a mirror, if that makes sense. I just need to kind of repeat back to them what they're already telling me, and allow their brain to deepen, allow it to play off of what I'm saying and develop its own process. One of the kind of highlights of the Buddhist tradition, kind of contemplative psychotherapy, what my degree was in, is trusting that they know what they need to do, and actually not, as much as I can, put my agenda on top of them. trusting that their brain knows where it needs to go, and more facilitating that instead of directing that.
Do you feel like you're an expert more on how the brain works or how humans interpret the communication between their brain and themselves?
I think I have background in both. My bachelor's degree was in neuroscience, so I do bring in kind of the mechanics of how the brain works. But kind of the core of my practice is how the brain and the mind work together. So I say these are two different things because the brain is your organ, right? That is there to like recognize patterns and to make snap judgment calls and to create memories. And that's like where the thoughts come from. But the mind is something very different. The mind is the awareness that holds everything. And this is a concept from Buddhism, that the mind, that the brain is just like another sense, right? It's the same as touch, same as taste, same as, hearing, sight. It's just another way that we interact with the world. The mind is the thing that holds all of it. It's like the container. It's just the awareness that moves around. And the mind itself is unattached. And it's actually compassionate. It's actually very accommodating and very compassionate. So what I help people realize is that they're not their thoughts, that they're not their brain. Their brain, kind of as I like to say, is a good tool, but a bad master. So it's teaching people and helping them learn how to work with their brain from that place of awareness, from that place of mind, from that place that remains unchanging. A good example of this is if someone is enraged, if they're like very, very angry, right? And they're able to say to themselves in a thought, I'm very angry right now. It means that, maybe 99% of their brain is in this rage place where they're acting out and hurting people, maybe hurting themselves. But that 1% that can say, hey, I'm angry right now, that part is actually totally fine. Like that part is not angry at all. It is just the awareness. And I help people to associate their kind of sense of self with that awareness, with the part that is just always fine. And that's the part that has your best interest in heart. And that's the part that wants to heal you.
Very interesting. So you're saying that there's like a piece in there that's kind of always level-headed, and that throughout these ups and downs that you're going to go through, that if you can get your client to remember there's this piece of me that's level-headed, I'm going to be okay, then you can kind of start to break through some of those challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that piece, it's called mind in Buddhism. It's called soul in a lot of, religious texts.
Yeah.
It's called awareness. It's called wise mind in some therapy texts. It's the part of you that just simply watches, It's like if you have a thought and you can think in your head and there's like a little mic voice up there talking in your head. It's the part that's listening, right? Like it's the part that's listening to your thoughts. And that thing, whatever it is, loves you. It actually loves you, and it actually wants the best for you, and it's willing to hold you no matter what your experience is, because it's always there to listen. It's always present. We often forget that, and we associate more with the brain, or we associate more with our physical sensations. But that little part that's just listening, it's always there. As long as we're alive, it's always there, and that's the part that if we can feel into, and meditation is a great way to actually feel into that. Kind of also through exercise, like being in the zone, right? Being in that flow state where you're just there and you're present and you're just on it. That's also a way to feel into that place that is just present and is just capable, and knows what needs to happen. So I help people really start to associate with that place.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that I don't really think I've ever truly thought of or truly been aware of. So as far as like you've mentioned exercise and you've mentioned diet a little bit, I want to know your thoughts on diet and its connection to good mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical, and maybe from a different angle. I don't think there's like an ideal diet for mental health, but I think it's more of a relationship to food and a relationship to the body. So for me personally, I'm a vegetarian and I cook a lot of my own food. And it's more of this idea that like I'm nourishing myself, and more importantly, I'm taking the time to nourish myself. So it doesn't really matter what you eat, but it's kind of the intention that goes into it. If you're someone that's eating, fast food and eating it under stress, or eating it, just to feel sensation, to feel like that big juicy, Big Mac, and you don't feel good after it, that's kind of like drugs, in a way.
Yeah, certainly.
So it's more about people's relationship to food and to diet and to exercise too. There's training, which is very important, of like pushing yourself and getting there. But I'm more of a fan of mind body exercise, and for me that's yoga. But for other people, like running or lifting or whatever it needs to be, but just being present with it and doing it from a place that is nurturing and not self-aggressive. If you can relate to your body in a nurturing way, you'll start to relate to your mind that way.
Right. And if you're willing to put in a little extra time to prepare a little bit better, or maybe not even better food, but you're just willing to take the time out of your day or out of your week to prepare your meals, knowing that like this is my fuel. What I'm making right now is what's going to fuel my body, and then you're taking better care of your body, which is going to directly correlate to better mental health, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just that intention, like you said, just setting time to heal and nurture yourself. That will trickle over into healing and nurturing your mind.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. So I think you said earlier you're seeing a lot of male clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say like what's that like age range approximately?
So kind of there's two groups. What's coming in now is a lot of like high school, college, like coming of age.
Okay.
And then a lot of like 50 plus, kind of like the old users, the old drunks, kind of stuff like that. I actually like those older guys because I can really direct with them and kind of like banter with them, and they like that a lot. But the younger guys, and this is a whole nother topic, is kind of the idea of masculinity has been distorted and has been kind of corrupted. And a lot of males, especially in the millennial generation, which I'm a part of, don't really have good role models. And we're kind of losing what masculinity means. And just to put it really quickly is, it's not the idea of this like macho jerk, this like macho, hard motherfucker, like that's kind of antiquated. And it's not this like new agey, hippie, feminine like person either. It's kind of like putsy person. It's something in between. It's something where we can be okay with being men and being in our masculinity without feeling shame. And a big part of masculinity, especially for those younger folks, is power and mission. And a lot of men I'm seeing, especially the younger ones, are having a lot of trouble owning their power because our culture is going through a thing right now which is really suppressing masculine power, which needs to happen because it's been really out of check for a long time. But a lot of these men are taking it to heart. A lot of these men, for instance, are afraid to, make a move on a girl because they think they're going to rape her, right? Or they're afraid to have a disagreement with somebody because they think they have to please everybody. Or they're afraid to get angry because they've been told that they're afraid of their anger. Their anger could come out like a beast or a wild animal. And while these things are true, and people certainly have experiences of them, it's about working with those kind of more masculine forces in a way that is kind of, synthesized, that's kind of holistic. Training men to be men that are strong and that are upstanding and that have ethics and have values and that have a purpose in the world, that really want to make their mark on this planet and do something good, and not fall prey to self-harming things like addiction or diet, but really have a purpose and have a mission and fight a personal battle. I really believe that men, I think more than women, have a real deep need for a personal battle and a personal war. My experience with women is it's more about relation and more about building community, which is also very important. But for men, it's about making like a mark on the world. And a lot of men lose that, or they are doing it for a reason that they're not really connected to, or they have been told that their opinions don't matter. And I work with a lot of young men to help them find purpose and direction, so they don't fall prey to like the party lifestyle, right? Or to like the Playboy lifestyle, or to the lifestyle that is more about hedonism and more about pleasure seeking and less about what are you going to do? Like, what's your war? What's your mission? What do you want to change about the world? I think that's something that masculine energy really brings and really does a good job of making the world a better place.
Yeah, I certainly do agree with that. And I think that's a good way to put it. I think that's a good way that that a young male, I'm 26 years old, kind of coming of age, a good way to push that masculinity is saying, how are you going to change the world? What are you going to do to make an impact? And I think that kind of taps into that, not like that primal instinct, but like I can make a difference, and this is why I'm going to do it, and this is how I'm going to do it. And with the right morals and the right values, you can be a very positive influence doing those things.
Hmm. Yeah. For you or for your readers, there's this book called Iron John, which is about masculinity. It actually deconstructs one of the Grimm's fairy tales called Iron John. It's one of the only Grimm's fairy tales about men. Most are about women's stories, like Cinderella, Snow White, Rapunzel, stuff like that. And it's very old wisdom about what it means to be a man. And part of that, there's kind of two parts I want to talk about really quickly. The first part being this idea of, it's called the Red Knight. It's the idea of just anger, which a lot of men feel, that I definitely feel. It's kind of where I'm at right now, where I'm just kind of angry a lot, and kind of lashing out and, having a lot of energy to like just fight and kind of like a berserker rage and kind of just like make shit happen and just like nose to the grindstone and go, 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 go. And that's okay. That's kind of a uniquely masculine thing, is that we get that kind of fury. But what develops into is what you're talking about, Mike, which is called the White Knight in the story. And it's the idea of like the samurai. It's the idea of the warrior that has a code, that has ethics, that has values, that can do as effective as the berserker with a single strike, right? It's like a samurai needs to just cut once with a sword and cut somebody in half, where a berserker needs to like hack with an axe like 100 times. But it's about being effective in your life and having that like code, like the Bushido, the code to come back to again and again, where that's the driver. The driver isn't just, fucking shit up. The driver is this higher purpose. And then the last phase is called the Black Knight, or the King phase, which is about being able to give that all up and to sit back and to actually watch your kingdom and watch it grow, and to stop fighting, but to actually build a system and build a society in which you're kind of just sitting on the throne and watching it happen. That's kind of like a later life masculinity thing, of being able to get out of the fight, to know when it's time for the younger people to go off to war, and where you're more helpful being in a teacher or supervisor position. You're more of an elder or a sage.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's a really, really good way to kind of think about what masculinity should be, and that there's going to be a lot of different steps. But yeah, I think that hits it perfectly, and I think that explains it perfectly. And as you're explaining that, I was sitting here thinking back to how that kind of pertains to me, and kind of where I am on that scale, and then thinking about how awesome it's going to be someday when I am in that king phase, where I can sit back and watch the things that I've influenced just happen.
Yeah, pretty great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm nowhere near there yet either.
Yeah.
But a lot of older men forget about that. Like they keep fighting, and it's very hard for them to step back. It's very hard for men to retire. To like know when it's time, know when they've built a kingdom that's worth inhabiting. And yeah, I mean, just the thing of those phases, especially the Red Knight phase, the anger phase, that's something that's really been shut down recently. And I really help young men get in touch with that anger and turn it into passion, turn it into a mission and a purpose. Because so much we're told that our anger is not okay and that it's not accepted and that it will hurt people. And yeah, for a lot of us it does. But it's about learning how to channel that and turn that into a source of energy. Like men can work all day. I mean, I work 12-hour days regularly and I love it because I'm on my purpose. We can do really incredible feats of energy. That's something that the masculine trait has, is the ability to just fight that war and to really just be in that situation.
That's it. I mean, you've done great. Man, thanks a lot for being on the show. It's been great Uh, I think you've got a lot of really good insights and a lot of really good points have been made. And we're definitely going to have episode number 2 to dive a little deeper into some things. Um, but yeah, thanks a lot for being on the show. Where can we find you online?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's been great. I'd love to continue the conversation. It's stuff I'm really passionate about, and I think stuff needs to really get out there. It's good to have talked to a couple of guys that are kind of on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
They're kind of on this like self-improvement, self-development track. So it's been a pleasure. The place to find me, first and foremost, is my website, which is marc-azoulay.com. So first name dash last name. On there, there's all the links to all of my social media. You can find me on Facebook at /Marc Azoulay Therapy, or at Twitter at Moksha Mark. Moksha is Moksha, and it's the Hindu word for liberation, for freedom.
All right. I was actually thinking about that earlier. Like, what does that word mean?
Mm-hmm.
But also, man, I again, I really appreciate you being on the show. It's been great. And we look forward to having you again.